ho, ho, movie Christmas. Hi, I'm Dave, and I am one of the hosts of Mind Frames. My co-host, Mike Cockrell, is behind the iPhone, making sure we get all this in sort of sharp detail. I want to say hi, Mike.
Hello.
And we are sharing with you stuff from the world of home entertainment that might be a little bit easier for you to get a hold of at the last minute while you're figuring out your Christmas shopping. Our first two episodes have covered stuff. They've covered a lot of just general releases. And in those general releases, I neglected to mention the Shout Factory Collector's Editions that came out over the course of the last year. I want to recommend several of them to you without going too long about them. The thing about Screen Factory Collector's Editions is you get a slipcase, you get the reversible artwork, you get a ton of special features, tons of extra stuff. You basically get a wealth of knowledge about the films. And they do a really good job picking which films are going to get collector's editions. And I just can't recommend them enough. I have, I think, every single collector's edition Shout Factory, Screen Factory has ever done. And I find myself continually going back to them because even the supplemental material on them is so much fun. This is Silver Bullet, the old Gary Busey rocket-powered wheelchair Twin Peaks actor playing a pastor who also happens to be a werewolf movie. It's every bit as cheesy as it sounds. It's actually really pretty darn effective and really great, cheesy, wonderful bit of 80s 80s horror cinema. Can't recommend it enough. The Blob, the 1980s Blob. One of the best sequels ever made. You can watch this movie anytime. It has aged beautifully. It is scary. It is intense. And it has that wonderful 80s practical effects vibe. And again, tons of special features on this thing. Big Trouble in Little China. There have been some really good editions of Big Trouble in Little China that have come out. The Shout Factory went all out this year, and they did a steelbook, and I think that they did one you could get a record with, and this has tons of new special features on it, and all the old special features that were on all those older discs, and comes with a spiffy slipcover, and it's really cool. I like it. This is a movie by Richard Franklin. If you don't know him, it's too bad. He directed Psycho 2. He directed Cloak and Dagger. He directed a really fun movie called Link about a murderous orangutan. You could do well worse for entertainment than go look up his old 80s catalog. And this is a great 80s movie. It stars Stacy Keach, Jamie Lee Curtis, and it's basically a road suspense film. I don't want to tell you too much more about it, but this director was absolutely fantastic at generating suspense. And this is a movie from his golden period. You definitely want to check it out. The one I'm really excited about, if I could have only one of these special collector's editions, would be Dracula with Frank Angelica and Laurence Olivier, directed by John Badham from 1979. This version of the disc includes the desaturated version that John Badham had wanted to release in theaters. So you have the option to see it like you saw it, if you're like me, theatrically when it came out. You also have the option to watch that desaturated version. I've seen both versions. Both really have their sweet spots, their case for being sort of the definitive version of the film. There are tons of special features on this. To my mind, this is the best version of Dracula ever put on film. And I will say that until I see a better version, and that includes the Lugosi, it includes Christopher Lee. I love those versions. I revere those versions. I revere those characterizations of the Count. But this is a lush, romantic, gothic, spooky period piece with great character actors and a great cast, and it's to my mind it's the definitive one. Might get you in the mood to watch that new BBC version of Dracula that's getting ready to hit. I think it's going to be several 90-minute episodes, and the trailers have been really intense and fun. But maybe this will help whet your appetite. So without too much ado, we're going to get into what we call, and this is a good intro to, our B-movie Christmas. To do this every year, I go to studios, I ask for catalogs, for the titles from their back catalog. Older titles that they wouldn't normally be promoting this time of year, but that I want to finish my collection and that I want to be able to continue to promote because I love older horror films and sci-fi films and horror films of the 30s, 40s, or the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So, to start, I'm gonna throw some titles at you from Kino. We are so lucky to have boutique labels. These are the companies that continue to make sure that you can watch movies. Less than 1/3 of my collection of about 6,000 Blu-rays and DVDs is actually available to stream, or probably would be available to stream. Certainly would never be able to stream at any one time. And I have a pretty well curated collection of classic cinema. So to put that in perspective, imagine going into a library and 2/3 of the books being gone. Streaming is a really valuable tool to help educate yourself about cinema. But odds are you, if you're like me and you really, really, really love old movies, and you particularly love the movies you grew up on, you probably will do well to have physical copies of them, especially as physical media moves more and more into being a niche thing. That said, I'm going to highlight the work of some labels that are out there doing that hard work for us. First label I want to highlight is Kino. They put out scads of this stuff. And here's a movie you've probably never heard of, The Ghost of Sierra de Cobre. It stars Martin Landau. It was directed by Joe Stefano and written by him. Joe Stefano was one of the big architects of the Outer Limits TV show. It's spooky, it's weird, it's unexpected for the time period, and it's a movie that would just be lost to time if people like Kino didn't make it available. Here's Dead of Night. Dead of Night was the first horror anthology. It was done in Britain in the 1940s, and it's got a fantastic wraparound story, and it's really scary. Dead of Night. Here's Zoltan, Hound of Dracula, starring, directed by Albert Band, starring Jose Ferrer, Michael Pataki, and Reggie Nalder. And yes, this is a movie about Dracula's dog. It is every bit as cheesy and wonky as you'd imagine. A lot of fun. Definitely the kind of thing if you saw it when you were growing up on the TV, you'd probably turn the sound down, hope mom and dad didn't catch you watching it, and give it a shot. Also, they have some stuff. Have you ever seen a dinosaur movie where they basically use lizards, they use iguanas, and they glue frills on them? Okay, very politically incorrect. Not encouraging people to make movies like that today. But I guarantee you all the iguanas in these movies are dead. So I'm going to go ahead and recommend these movies. This is At the Earth's Core, starring Peter Cushing and Doug McClure, who was of course, the inspiration for Troy McClure on The Simpsons. You might know me from such films as At the Earth's Core and The Land That Time Forgot. There's another one called The People That Time Forgot. Lots of horrible caveman, dinosaur, cheesy special effect moments in these movies. They're classics of that genre. How about a British ripoff of King Kong from the 1960s starring Michael Gough, who went on to play the butler in the first iteration of the Batman movies. This is called Konga. So they're not getting any inspiration at all from King Kong. That's the big thing you need to know about this movie. This is a bare bones release. It's kind of a shame. You really wish there was a kind of a hammy commentary on it, but it's a lot of fun. Actually a better movie than many movies of its type, but definitely something I recommend with a bit of a jaundiced eye. This I just recommend, period. This is a movie genre fans have been waiting to come out for forever. It stars Christopher Lee. If that's not a reason to go out and get it, I don't know what is. Hercules and the Haunted World. This is a movie also directed by Mario Bava, one of the greatest directors of genre movies ever. And the subject of that enormous, beyond enormous Tim Lucas book of a number of years ago that you can't even get now because it costs $500-600 for a copy of it. This is so fun, so brightly colored, so over the top, so full of weird rotoscope and man-in-suit strange effects. Cannot recommend it enough. You will have a blast. It's a Hercules movie. The guy who plays Hercules is named Reg Park. Lou Ferrigno made a couple of those movies. Basically, they were muscle man movies that used, the Hercules thing because they didn't have to pay to use the character. And they're a lot of fun if you can get a hold of them. Hercules and the Haunted World is one of the very best of those. One of the best British suspense movies ever made, And Soon the Darkness. Finally out on Blu-ray. Finally available in a decent format. 2 audio commentaries on this. Very, very, very worth seeing. It will leave you on the edge of your seat. And is one of those suspense movies that you think you're going to just watch an old movie, and then all of a sudden you realize you're in for more than you bargained for. This is The Magic Sword from the brilliant mind of Mr. Big himself, Burt I. Gordon, who did such hits as The Amazing Colossal Man and The Giant Spider. Burt I. Gordon specialized in making things really big and really small, and then putting actors in with those really big and those really small images, and making you realize that the good special effects take more than doing that most of the time. But this has, it's a fairy tale movie. Really recommend it. Really, really fun stuff. They are also, Kino is, the leader in 3D cinema. I have a 3D TV, and I have about 100 3D movies. And I don't have every 3D movie ever made, but I have all the good ones. And it's really fun when a new one comes out, especially a new one from the 50s, because that's back when they were making 3D, because they were just trying to make fun movies, and they weren't necessarily trying to say too much with the movies. This is Jabaro 3D. Fernando Lamas is in this. It's a jungle adventure, so you get all sorts of stuff thrown at you in this movie. This is an underwater movie with a lot of great 3D underwater photography from 1960 called September's Storm. That is directed by Byron Haskin, who did Robinson Crusoe on Mars and The War of the Worlds, and really has never been available. They have a bunch of new 3D movies coming out this year. Here's a modern 3D movie. If you want to see one of the best movies of the year, go get Long Day's Journey into Night and try to see it, if you can, in a format that allows for 3D. They have included 3D in this film. I think there's at least an hour-long shot in 3D on this film. That's one of the great shots of the year in film, and it's magical. It's viscerally romantic, and fantastic stuff. There's lots and lots of other great movies that you can get from them. This isn't even close to all of them. They have a lot of great Vincent Price thrillers. There's Twice Told Tales. There's The Oblong Box. Here's a time travel thriller called Dimension 5 with Harold Sakata, who played Odd Job, the steel-brimmed hat assassin in the Bond movies. Here's a Vincent Price movie called Madhouse. A kaiju movie called Yongari, Monster from the Deep. Journey to the Seventh Planet, which is full of the sorts of cliched imagery that you expect from wonky 50s cheap sci-fi. And here is a movie that's actually been done tons and tons and tons, and oddly enough, been done on the radio a lot. It's called Donovan's Brain, and I don't know why they haven't remade this movie. You could do a great remake of Donovan's Brain today. There's an audio commentary on this. Trailers from Hell has Joe Dante talking to you about it. And there's features on all of these discs that I'm telling you about. That takes care of the world of Kino. Now I want to go to Shout Factory, because they have been doing a fantastic job in 2 areas. One is re-releasing old Universal horror films and Universal style horror sci-fi films, and the other is getting Hammer films on Blu-ray and into the hands of fans in the US. That has been kind of one of those situations where we've waited and waited and waited and waited, and we just cannot get our movies on Blu-ray with extra features. First thing they've done is they started releasing these box sets. Horror Collection Volume 1, Horror Collection Volume 2, Universal Horror Collection Volume 3. And on these 3 sets, you get movies like The Black Cat, The Invisible Ray, The Raven, Murders in the Zoo. It's an amazing, wonderful thriller if you've never seen it. The Mad Ghoul, Tower of London, Man-Made Monster, the movie that the studio used to test Lon Chaney Jr. with audiences before they cast him in The Wolfman. These are great sets. All of these movies, virtually all of them are going to have audio commentaries on them, sometimes 2 audio commentaries on them. And they've also released a ton of stuff this year. The Alligator People. The Monolith Monsters, which is about these crystals that grow to great heights, fall, and then keep growing. And so they make this forward progress towards a town, and the town has to figure out how to stop them. One of the weirdest science fiction films of the 1950s. Monster on Campus, one of the worst science fiction films in the Universal cycle. Murders in the Rue Morgue, starring Bela Lugosi, one of the rare instances in which Lugosi was well used. And again, special features and everything on that disc. Last but not least, The Leech Woman. She drained men of their loves and lives. Great film for Valentine's Day, guys. If you're feeling a little, a little bitter, settle down. We're all out there, we're all plugging, we're all trying, men and women alike. But if you really need to, you can watch The Leech Woman and go to bed. And I won't be doing that because I have a healthier view of the whole male-female dynamic myself. But you can imagine how good The Leech Woman is. These are all wonderful, twonky movies. Some of them are Universal titles. Some of them are just sort of in that style. They will bring you back to that time and place, and I really recommend them. The last of our movies in the B-Movie Christmas are all Hammer movies. When you think Hammer movies, you think Dracula and Frankenstein. If you're a deeper cut guy, you might think The Wolfman. You might think they're mummy films. But you're still thinking Christopher Lee. You're probably thinking Oliver Reed. You're probably thinking Peter Cushing and that cast of sort of stable players. You're not thinking of movies that go any deeper than that in the canon. And the truth is I've often said I've never seen a Hammer film that I didn't want to finish watching. They're all really fun. They have these really colorful casts, and they have a great sense of time and place about them. And often they're very, very, very effective, way more effective than they're given credit for. They have done at Screen Factory just a stunning job of releasing Hammer films, and they're stepping up their release of these films. And again, they almost all have special features on them. In fact, I think, all the ones I'm going to recommend to you have special features from some of the leading authorities on Hammer film and on this period of film history. A lot of them fall into various categories. There are occult thrillers, there are monster movies, and reworkings of their franchise films. First, I'll give you a couple of occult thrillers. To the Devil a Daughter, starring Richard Widmark and Christopher Lee, and a very, very young Natasha Kinski. Very good occult thriller. Definitely been kind of a neglected Hammer film. We'll see if this list, or if this release does it any better. This is one of the best Hammer occult thrillers, if not the best ever released. It's called La Fiancée du Diable, which is the devil.
La Fiancée du Diable.
Thank you. This is the Devil's Bride, or was more popularly known, as you can see on the spine, The Devil Rides Out with Christopher Lee. One of the great occult thrillers ever made. Christopher Lee, for once, playing the good guy. Can't recommend it enough. He's an occultist minister, Christian minister, battling a Satanist in this film, played by the man who is fancy for doing the interstitial announcements during the time warp during the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So you can do a double feature with that if you want. There's also Horror of Frankenstein, starring Dave Prowse as the creature, one of the later Frankenstein films. Does not have Peter Cushing in it, but has Ralph Bates doing the experiments. Here's another Ralph Bates movie called Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, which is, needless to say, a pretty interesting take on the whole Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing. This is, clearly when Hammer is foundering to find an audience, and so they decide to have Mr. Hyde turn into a woman.
Wait. I think I got to see that one.
You do need
that's
to see that.
That's some interesting from a non-binary standpoint.
I'm saying
that's interesting.
And again, lots of special features to help put these things in their context. Blood from the Mummy's Tomb. Hammer did several mummy movies. I haven't seen this one yet. I'm really looking forward to it. It's looks like it's in color and really lush and fun, and it does have a mummy in it. So what else do you want? Monsters. The Abominable Snowman of the Himalayas, starring of all people Forrest Tucker and Peter Cushing. A great monster movie of the period that has long been neglected and long been unavailable. I really recommend you go out and get this. It also it's written by Nigel Neal, who did the Quartermass movies. So this is an important genre film. Lastly, I'm going to give you 3 thrillers from the Hammer era. It should be noted that Arrow Video has been putting out Hammer box sets. And they do have Hammer box sets that deal with mostly the black and white period of Hammer when they were making sort of psycho thrillers and finding their audience. These are later films from, I believe, 1974, 1972, 1974, and they all fall firmly into the psycho killer, psycho stalker category, and they're all a lot of fun and really tense, and they sort of belong on a shelf with And Soon the Darkness. Straight On Till Morning, Fear in the Night, which has Judy Geeson, Joan Collins, Ralph Bates, and Peter Cushing. Really great cast there. And Fright, starring one of my favorite actresses from that period, Susan George, are all basically, suspense thrillers and well worth your time. And if you're a Hammer completist, you're really excited to see them come out in these editions. That's going to be it for B-Movie Christmas. I hope this has helped you with your Christmas shopping. I hope it's helped you whether you're shopping for yourself or for somebody else. Until then, see you next year, and movie Christmas.